Hi, and welcome to Church Connect, County's new weekly programme to engage, encourage, equip you as a church leader and as local churches across the United Kingdom to make Jesus known. I'm Martin Erwin. I'm the CEO of Counties, and I'm joined by Helen Rimmer. Helen, brilliant to have you here. Helen, tell us a little bit about yourself. We in some ways, people probably know me just from the little editorial in Ignite magazine or through speaking at churches, as I often do. And I've been with Counties for just almost 30 years now. But tell us a little bit about yourself and your own connection with the work of Counties.
Yeah, so I joined Counties back in 2012 as communications assistant or officer, back when John Wilkes was CEO and then in the Westbury office. And I've been responsible for writing Ignite magazine, annual reports, social media, that sort of thing. I lived in Trowbridge for a few years, and then we moved to Hampshire 2 years ago. But I don't know if you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from around here. I'm from Birkenhead in Merseyside, but we left there about 20 years ago. I'm married to Peter, and we've got 3 kids, Max, Louis and Phoebe. So freelance with Counties for a little bit. And then I joined recently back as a staff member, working part-time.
That's great. Well, it is brilliant to have you back on board with us, Helen. Though you never really left, it's just great to have you, and great to have you here helping to present Church Connect as well, and helping produce so much of other material that we've got. Just for those who are joining us, you and I won't be presenting this together every week. We're going to just rotate that a little bit. Helen, you caught up with Jacquie Bodmin, who's a trainee Counties evangelist down in Camborne in Cornwall.
Hi, our next guest is Jacquie Bodmin, and she's a trainee evangelist from Cornwall, and she's also in the leadership team at Camborne Community Church there. Jackie's also on the front of the summer edition of Ignite, and she shares a story about her experience and her husband's experience of COVID-19. We thought we'd speak to Jacquie today to find out more about how God has been speaking to them both through this time, and the gospel opportunities which have opened up as a result of the lockdown and social distancing measures. So first of all, welcome, Jacquie.
Thank you, happy to be here.
And can you just briefly explain to viewers who may not know you a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Okay, so as I say, my name is Jacquie Bodmin. We live in Cornwall. My husband is a pastor of Camborne Community Church. We planted the church 6 years ago, and we've seen God do amazing things. We've gone from 15 to about 70 people, and so therefore I'm the children, youth and family worker. We've just started neighbourhood chaplains as well, and I'm a trainee evangelist with Counties.
Wow. So can you tell me a little bit more about neighbourhood chaplains and the work of that team in your community during this time? What sort of things you've been doing?
So we were just meant to be doing a soft launch in March. So God's timing was amazing. We'd done our training from November. We were ready to start. And literally the Saturday before we went into lockdown, I gave everyone their uniforms. And then bang, this happened. So it's been really amazing, the opportunities that God has opened up for us with neighbourhood chaplains, because obviously we couldn't do door to door or anything like that. But He has opened up some really amazing avenues within the hospitals.
So what sort of things have you been doing? I've heard that you've volunteer has been visiting the COVID-19 wards and actually offering support to patients there.
Yeah, so we have a lady, she's actually a nurse practitioner, and she was looking for a job. Again, God's amazing. She was currently working in the 111 clinic, and she was actually looking at different roles. So she was, 1 week she was working in a big hospital in Trelisk, another one she was working in the country hospital in doctor's surgeries. And because she had been doing this for 6 weeks, she had built up amazing relationships. So when she explained to them what we'd got as chaplains and what we could do, we were invited into the cottage hospital first of all with the COVID-19 ward. We took in 14 different types of literature literature that is on all the wards. It's in the waiting rooms, it's in the staff areas, and we just have to keep resupplying them because the literature is going. That's from Bibles to Hope magazines to Good News newspapers to tracts to all sorts of stuff. She's done exactly the same with the main hospital, and the church are also making scrub bags for the staff, which again we put literature inside. They come to her for it. She offers would they like prayer, and most of them will accept prayer, and they also take a Bible. And we also have 111 when they go out on emergencies. They take our tracts with them, and they give them the COVID-19 tracts and the Hope tracts. So amazing what God's doing.
So you had COVID-19, and your husband Tim, who's also at the Camborne Community Church.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience there and what happened?
Yeah, I had it very mildly. I mean, my temperature didn't ever go above 38. I was very mild compared to Tim. You ache like nobody's business, and you've got a cough, and you feel very ill, but I was very mild. Tim, on the other hand, wasn't. He was very, very poorly. There were at times when I questioned whether he would get through it. His temperature was regularly over 39, 39.5, over 39.5. He would shake, his whole body would go into rigours that, he just couldn't control his body shaking. Terrible cough, very, severe breathlessness. And he looked like he was 104, and he said he felt like he was 104. So,
and how did your faith help you during this time?
Yeah, I really clung to Jesus through that time. It was very scary. It was very real, because I did know that there could be a chance that Tim didn't come home, and I had to really work through that with God, and get to the point where I could accept that if that was God's will, I would have to accept it, and that I would know that that was the best plan for us. And obviously for Tim that would be amazing if he went to heaven, but for us it'd be very hard left behind. But I had to really understand and accept that it's God's will, and I got to that place, and I could have only got to that place with God. He was very real. I spent so much time praying for Tim, and just spending time on my knees with God, and just reading the Bible and just hearing what he was saying. And he stayed very close to us both through that time.
And when I interviewed you for the Ignite article, you also mentioned about how you felt during this time that God was speaking to you about the church as well. Can you share more about that with you?
God spoke to me about Malachi. He told me to read Malachi 1 and 2. And I really felt him break it down to looking at taking it home to ourselves, church setting, and the church as a whole. And I felt that when I was looking at myself, what is my devotional time like? Is it hurried? Do I really take that sacrifice out of my day to really spend time with God? Do I give him that real offerings of my devotional time, my worship, my everything I've got with him? Or is it like a blemished sacrifice? Do I sometimes do things because I have to, like Sunday school, or preparing for Sunday school, or for an outreach or something? Is it a case of you just do it? Or is it a real, Lord, I'm doing this for you, this is my offering to you, this is my sacrifice to you? And then I felt him show me with the church, looking at a church, what is our worship about? Do we worship because we're getting something out of it? Are we really enjoying our time and forgetting that this worship's to God? It's not about us. Are we really worshiping from the bottom of our hearts? Our everything we do within the church, our outreaches, what we do, is it really for God, or is this just something we now do? And then looking at the church as a whole, what is our saltiness like as a church? Are we really the light and salt, or salt and light of the of basically to the world? Or have we become seeker friendly that we haven't got that sharp word coming through? And again, with our worship, do you know what I mean? What is it really like? Are we trying to attract people to our worship, or are we really showing people this is what it's about? And I felt the Lord really challenged me about those three things, and then say, but if we were to throw everything into him, if we were to throw everything we are, everything we've got. Do you know what I mean? The whole tithe, the whole of ourselves, the whole of everything we are into him. Look what he'll bring, look what he'll do, you know. Our storehouses will overflow. That's people. Our churches will overflow. We'll be church planting and church planting and church planting, because we're really throwing the whole tithe to him, and none of our offerings are blemished. They are 100% for him.
That's so encouraging. So as we move forward and lockdown starts to ease slightly and people are getting back to normal, how do you sense your church's role in your local community? How do you sense that changing, and what are your plans?
Yeah, I think as churches we're going to be so much more about doing live feeds. We've realised how much people, logging into what we do. You put something Christian on Facebook, and there's so many likes. There's so many people looking at it, aren't there? And I think we've really realised, haven't we, that actually there's other ways to reach people. You know, social media, the internet is such an amazing tool, and I think we'll use that so much more. I mean, we currently do a group for our toddler mums via Zoom, and they've asked, can we carry on doing this even when we go back to church? Can we still do this, because we love this group so much? So I think we're going to be a lot more, use a lot more technology and be a lot more interactive on the internet.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Jacquie. So thank you for sharing everything today. I hope you can encouragement to other people, and we'll be encouraged. Please keep us up to date with what you're doing, and we can share that. So Jacquie just spoke then about how she really clung to Jesus during that time. And I'm wondering, Martin, if you could unpack that a little bit more about how we as Christians, sometimes it takes something really awful for us to cling to Jesus, and how we can, look to have that deeper relationship with Jesus all the time. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a bit more.
I thought I loved that phrase that Jacquie used, clinging to Jesus. I actually wrote it down as she said it, because it really struck me. When we're going through challenging or difficult times, Helen, that forces us to lean hard onto God and to depend on him. And I think for many of us, and I include myself, sometimes it's not that life can be too easy, but when life's easy, we don't pray as much. Maybe we're not just trusting in God. The Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. And I just loved Jacquie's testimony and that phrase, clinging to Jesus. Again, others have said when God is all you have, you discover that God is all you need. And maybe for many of us as Christians, as local churches, as families, we're rediscovering the joy of having to trust in God and having to cling to Jesus, which is something Jacquie talked about.
She also mentioned about that when she was praying, that she felt like God was saying not to rush the devotionals, and how she was so it was just routine and it was a habit, but she wasn't really getting deeper into her relationship with God. So can you talk about that a bit more? Was that something that resonated with you?
It did very much so, Helen. I again, lots of us, I think, if we have a daily devotion, many of us were brought up with something called the quiet time, having a quiet time with God. And for those of us who are never quiet, that's very difficult. But in our leadership team, I'm part of the leadership at Queensway Chapel in Melksham, and one of our fellow leaders, in the first few weeks after lockdown happened, we realized that we were becoming very busy doing online stuff instead of doing real world stuff, if you like, physical stuff. And the church's busyness had just moved into a different reality, into the social media world. And we were too busy. And one of my fellow leaders said that he believed one of the things God was saying to the church, not just our church, but to the church, perhaps worldwide even, but certainly in the West, was to be still and know that I am God. And there was a danger that because we were so active, and counties as a network of evangelists, we want to be busy making Jesus known. But God's saying, stop and be still and lean on me, trust in me, get to know me, walk with me. And so Jacquie reflected on that, and I really believe that God's inviting Christians and churches into two areas, and just to unpack what Jacquie said, and I talked about this on another video that I did with Phil Davis, Counties Evangelist in Swansea, and Stephen McCoy, who's one of our trustees, but he's the general director of sister organisation called Glow. God's calling us, I think, to a deeper walk, so that's what we've just been reflecting on. Deeper, but also wider. So deeper into our relationship with God. It would be a terrible tragedy for Christians and for churches not to get into deeper waters with God in this season. You know, if God shuts everything down or allows it to be shut down in COVID-19 season, what a shame if we can't stop and be still. So let's encourage one another to go deeper, to spend more time in the Word of God. The verse that struck me in my own quiet time, some people have watched over the last few weeks, Soap for the Soul, which I was producing. That's a reflection of my own personal devotion. Soap standing for Scripture, Observation, Application, and Prayer. I've got to be honest, the first three I can write about a lot: Scripture, Observation, Application. But my prayer was usually a one line, and then I'd done my devotions and off I go for the day. But there's a verse in 1 Peter, I might quote the reference wrong. I think it's 1 Peter 4:7. And Peter writes, and he says, because the end of the world is coming, which is an interesting phrase given our own context right now. But he says this should encourage you to pray earnestly and with discipline. And so God has challenged me. And in the back of my journal, I've written down a prayer page where I've just listed things to pray about, people to pray for, and I have started to try and go deeper in my prayer times and to really make time to pray. So that's deeper. And the other thing is to go wider. And I have been thrilled, and we've heard from Jacquie, and we're going to hear in a moment from David and Lindsey Brown. We're encouraged to go into the world and make disciples. The Spirit of God is not on lockdown. He is not socially distant or restricted. And so we have the Spirit of God who is encouraging us to go wider with the good news of Jesus and make disciples. And I think we should be challenged as churches about not just how we go deeper as believers, but wider into the world in this season with the gospel of Jesus.
Brilliant. That's really encouraging and good to hear.
Each week we will interview one evangelist, 3 questions in 60 seconds.
Church Connect. I've been asked to answer 3 questions. Question 1, can you share 3 things about you nobody knows? I love The Greatest Showman musical. Up until being 43, I was collecting comic book figures. And it nearly cost me my marriage because it was taking over the entire house, so I had to sacrifice and give it to my grandson. Number 3, and nobody knows this for sure, I reversed into the only parked car in the church car park not long after I passed my test. Thank God she showed me grace. Number 2, are you sunrise, daylight, twilight or night? That's easy, I'm a night person because I live in an house full of women and that's the only time I get the remote to watch what I want. Number 3, if you could sit on a bench in a beautiful woods, who would you sit with? Well, that's easy. That would be my lovely wife, because we're both so busy and I would love the opportunity to just sit in a nice, beautiful woods with my wife. That's right, isn't it? Is that what you told me, sir? Yeah.
Helen, one of the interesting things just recently, we get a weekly update from our evangelists about what God is doing through their lives in ministry. And one of those was David Brown, who is in the West Midlands. And he talked about a neighbour on the street who had passed away, and they held a memorial on the street. You caught up with David and Lindsey just recently, and the interview that we're going to watch now.
Yeah, so David and Lindsey, they live in Dudley. Should we listen to them now?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Martin. Right, here we are with David and Lindsey Brown this morning. They're evangelists from West Midlands, and they've been reaching out to their neighbours during lockdown. Hello, David and Lindsey.
Hi.
Hello.
Great. Can you explain when lockdown was announced and how you had to change your plans like everybody else, where the idea for going out onto the streets and singing some Christian songs, where that idea came from?
It wasn't an original idea, you know, at all. It was there was a video being shared. Lots of people got it. If it was a vicar in London, I think, and he was going out on the street with his big amp, and he was singing. He sang Amazing Grace and said the Lord's Prayer and said a few words. And I said to Dave, I wonder if we could do something like that on our street. You know, it seemed all a bit scary, I have to say, at the time. But we thought about it, didn't we? And I think that the opportunity came probably when we realised the next Friday was Good Friday, and we just felt that perhaps that would be a really good launching pad. Although at the time, I think we thought this would just happen once. We didn't think it would happen every week.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I was a little bit reluctant at first. I was thinking, you know, we'd be right plonkers going out there and doing that all on our own, not imagining that we'd get loads of people come and join us. But there was also a message came out on social media. I think we got WhatsApp with somebody. I think there was an encouragement for Christians across the country to go out and sing Amazing Grace and say the Lord's Prayer on their street at 3 on Good Friday. But yeah, that was how it all started.
Yeah, and it just kind of went from there. I think we did it the once, and then we had a text from a neighbour who said, "Oh, are you going to do something else?" And so we kind of thought, "Oh, right. Well, we hadn't thought that we would, but you know, that's what people want, and we will certainly do it."
So, can you describe where you live? Is it a big street, or is it the many houses there? With the the neighbours that turned out to these events, are they from the immediate street, or did the word get out and did it spread?
Yeah, it's a cul-de-sac with 28 houses on it,
right,
in residential areas on the edge of Dudley. So it's a fairly middle-class area, I would say. And in terms of people coming out, I mean, we were pleasantly surprised. We had about 25 the first couple of weeks. Last couple of weeks, about 15. And then for the memorial for June, I think it was about 40 or more, 45. And VE Day, even more. Most of them are from our street, but then we have had a few who've popped down from other streets who've either been tipped off by someone on our street or heard about it some other way.
So you mentioned your neighbour Jean there. Can you tell us more about Jean, what happened and why you decided to hold the memorial service?
Well, Jean was 92, and we've probably known her for about 20 years. She was a church-going lady. She went to the CV church just up the road, and she was a very jolly lady, wasn't she? Really jolly and friendly. Always had a lovely word to say whenever we saw her. And it was actually one of the other neighbours who told us when Jean's funeral was going to be, and she said it would be so lovely if we could just stand out on the street and clap as the cortege goes by. So it really sprung from that initial suggestion, and we thought, why don't we do something a little bit more and have a little memorial, a little tribute, because lots of the neighbours would have attended a funeral, and obviously the family, word came back to us that they were just absolutely thrilled to hear what we'd done, and just as a tribute to their mum. So it was lovely.
And also, apparently, the funeral director said he'd never seen anything like it in all his time.
And you also held some VE Day celebrations on the street.
It was a lovely occasion because it brought the community together. It's a street where everyone's got cars, and for much of the time people are just passing in cars, and that VE Day party and the weekly Friday afternoon song at 3 has just brought people out actually onto the street and interacting with each other in a much more intimate way, I guess. And a number of people have expressed appreciation.
So how do you see it moving forward now as lockdown eases, and how you can build on those relationships that you've formed during this time?
Well, that's something we're praying a lot about at the moment, because things are moving very quickly. The easing of the lockdown and people getting back to normal life, and we're just trying to really pray and ask God to lead us by the Holy Spirit into how we move things forward. Obviously, we don't want things just to stop. We want things to carry on.
Add anything, Dave? So for example, this afternoon, we're not sure whether to make this the last one, given the changes that are coming again on Monday. but we decided to go for Shine Jesus Shine because we thought we'd have a prayer for schools and for children as their sort of partial opening next week. There's actually a lady on the street who's an acting head teacher, but we sort of build that as really focusing on the kids, because that's something they often sing in school assemblies. And then every week we put out a song sheet on the morning, first thing in the morning, so that people have got the words. And some people sing along as we play a recording to drown our own voices out. And then we were wondering, do we have some sort of informal social gathering, maybe some sort of coffee morning, each other's back gardens, no more than 6, 2 meters apart. Been able to chat far more to people than for a long time. Well, probably all the time we lived here to some extent with some people, as people have been.
And finally, what would be your advice to other churches around the UK from the experience of what you've done with your neighbours on the street? Have you got any advice for people who may be considering doing something similar or moving on now into the next stage?
Go on, you're going to say something there.
I was just going to say, I suppose we just went for it, the idea was there, we thought, go for it. I think if God puts something on your heart, just pray for it, go for it, and see what he does, because
we wouldn't say this that everyone should do this.
No.
It might be right for some people. And it starts, I think, with loving them and praying for them and being open to what the Spirit might lead you to do. And it may be something totally new, or it may be picking up some idea that someone else has run with and saying, well, yeah, that could work, maybe with some adaptation in our particular context. But it is being open to opportunities to connect with people and share something of the message of Christ with them.
I think we should mention as well the prayer that the church, since the lockdown, what one lady organised a prayer rota, and we're quite a small church, and so we all signed up for prayer from 7 in the morning till I think 11 at night. So there are people in our church praying each hour for all of those hours, and we've taken an hour as well. And I think really that a lot of what we've seen happening has come through those prayers that have been sent up. We felt really strengthened by others praying, and by the fact that we are praying more and just getting closer to God during this time.
Well, thank you very much both for your time.
Thank you.
And I hope it's an encouragement for others who listen. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the last questions I asked David and Lindsey was about where do we go from here? So that was the question really, and I'm just wondering what you thought, Martin, about how we can build on those relationships and move forward.
Thanks, Helen. In our daily devotional program called Life Connect on Monday earlier this week, I talked a little bit about that. How can we plan in an age of uncertainty? So it's very difficult for churches to know exactly what will church look like. I know I think it's in Germany where they're opening up churches soon. They're banning singing because singing is just a terrible way to spread the virus, and I think that's probably when we get to meet, we may not be able to sing, which is going to be very strange if that happens to churches. But one thing that I think will happen, we will be allowed to meet in small groups, and whether that's house groups or whether it's with your neighbours in their garden or in your garden, I would be encouraging churches and church leaders to think about how we can grow larger through growing smaller. So I don't really know how that's going to work out, but I do believe that that's the way that we should be saying, okay, how's the wind of the Spirit blowing in this moment? Smaller groups, more smaller groups, garden groups, home groups when we can meet in homes, whether that's an Alpha course or Christianity Explored, or just over a cup of coffee and some cake, even if we have to bring your own cake and bring your own cups, whatever it is, I think that's going to be one major step forward for the church. I think larger church gatherings are going to be complicated, and I think the church are going to continue to use social media video services, Facebook, YouTube. And, you know, a number of us, including myself, have learned skills that I never thought I was going to have to learn. And I wasn't that interested because other people could do it. But I've learned how to video edit. I've learned how to use an editing suite. I've learned how to talk to camera. It may not look like it today, but hey, we're all still learning. And I think those two things, I don't know how it will go, but I think smaller groups, it looks like the book of Acts to me. There were large celebrations, and God willing, we'll be able to get to large celebrations, but church growth will come through engagement with our neighbours and friends and family in small groups. So what I encourage people to do, Helen, just as we wrap up today, is to continue to tune in. I hope that Church Connect becomes somewhere that church leaders come to, because we're going to try and unpack and explore those as things change, as social distancing might remain, but the lockdown continues to ease. We're going to ask and try to answer those questions over the coming weeks and who knows, maybe months. So I'd love people to continue to connect into Church Connect here with Counties. So thank you so much for joining us on the first ever Church Connect. I hope that you find it useful. And I'm going to say goodbye from me, and we'll see you soon. And Helen, goodbye from you.
Goodbye, and thank you for watching.
God bless. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Do you have a good story to tell? This is 2 Minute Twist.